this went through a basic understanding of digitalization, how it's used in the corporate world, and what does it mean there, and that journey, how it can be applied at an individual level, where you are on your current journey of moving for creation of digital assets and its monetization. Right? Let's quickly cover three principles, including something called ITO, followed by some preparation that will be required to do something like this, and then the execution of digitalization. Now, please understand this will come as a focus from a corporate standpoint, how it is applied and how those principles and preparation and executions take place there. And then related to at an individual level, how these can be utilized at best of its capacities to ensure that whatever you do as a strategic approach has the same fructifying results as has been happening for the corporates. Okay? And that is the purpose behind this as well. So let's jump into it. So how is digitalization executed? Okay, so that is the larger purpose, and that's what the takeaway from this part of the RISE2 day one is all about. So the principles, right? I mentioned there are three principles. All right, it is how digitally aware one is, and then what is the vision and the strategy, and then how the digital transformation is going to take place. So this is, if you see the green figure up on the left top, right? Now, the first question that is typically asked in a journey is, why do we need this? Okay, and that's what we try to do as well. Once you went to ccm.com and got your race score, okay. Now, once you got that, you understood the level of technology that one is, or in fact, we will go there and check that out as a subsequent topic. In fact, I think we've not gone to the RAISE framework as of now, and how RAISE can help you get your personal digitalization level per se. So, however, this has been done for corporates. RAISE is one of the frameworks that we've developed at CSIM, which is utilized by the corporates to find their level and the degree of digitalization currently as where they stand. This can be done at individual levels as well. Okay, so we'll come to that in the subsequent one. But so digital awareness is all about how they initiate and ideate, and to know that they should know at what waters are they treading right now. So as I mentioned to you, the RACE framework helps them understand and answers those questions: to what extent are there, and what is the degree of technology which the digitalization, at which part of journey they are currently at. So based on that level, they start working on what is the ultimate vision and so the strategy that they would want to adopt. Basically, by when they implement this, will it be better than the competition? Is it as new as it, or better than the current world that they're going to address to? Okay, so that is what some of the questions that will be answered at the second stage, which is what will be our digital future? What will it look like in the future? All right. Now, with that said, there will be design principles and will be implementation activities that go into play. What does that mean? So once they know what future they want to be into, right, and what is it that they want to achieve by going there, that will help them design the current scenarios of the journey to achieve the assets or the products or the goods or the services that they want at that date, which will be at par or better than their competition and ready for the world then. Okay, and then what sort of implementation will be required based on the preparedness, based on the RACE framework. Okay? So that's the second principle that one will go with. And third is, how do they realize this digital future? Okay, as part of the implementation. So even if they implement it, how they will realize it over a period of time. And that's when the operation automation comes into play. So how will they operate, right? Excuse me. I mentioned how a steel company will move from a steel sheet making company to a jewelry making company, right? So that requires a series of steps. So operations change accordingly and so on and so forth, right? So these are those principles, which is about digital awareness, vision strategy, and digital, so to speak, transformation. Got it? So these are the key IDEO principles, which stands for initiate, ideate, design, implementation, and operate. These are the key principles. Now, people who are a little more attentive now would have realized there is a tip, there's a top, and there's a song in this entire activation of IDEO. Okay. Those who would have realized, great. Those who don't, please refer back to RISE1, come back and again relate to it, because it will be very pertinent for you when you start adopting it. Okay. With that said, let's understand what is digitalization preparation. Okay. Now, what has been devised is called the digitalization wheel for the corporate world. What does it consist of? It consists of business diagnostics and analysis, right? Now, in most of the cases, businesses go back and understand, right, where do they stand in the current world. That is, if you remember, the think in the box principles, right? So they go through that whole framework, they understand where they are. With that, they come with the thinking that how, are they clearly aligned or they are not. Okay? Now, with that, and when I say aligned, it's aligned with the best in the class out there or not. If not, then they go through about recreating their vision, their strategy towards that whole larger definition of what will be required in the future. Okay, this is again, if you remember the principles that were discussed, now we're talking about this is the level of preparation that one goes into. Okay, so they get prepared by asking these kind of questions. Now, is the current model is enriched enough for meeting the model of the future? If yes, then should we tweak it further or should we just leave it the way it is? If not, then what is the model of the future, and just start working towards it. Second one, all right? Third, if there is a tweaking and there's a change, what sort of change? So that's a whole action plan. That's a roadmap creation. It's a third part of the wheel, which is creating the whole digital roadmap for creating the future that they're looking at from a digitalization perspective. Okay. Now, once they've done this, and now the roadmap is in the creation mode, the fourth element is the digital design implementation. Okay, so once you are clear on the model, what is the technology, what is the automation, how are they placed right now, so what is more that is required to be done are the answers that come from this stage in terms of preparation. Okay, so again, please follow this through, right? There is the whole tip in the first two, there's a whole top in the next two. Now we jump into a song, which is the digital transformation itself, right? Now there's a whole implementation principles. If you remember the RIOT framework out of the RIOT methodology and the EPIC framework, right? Those are those principles that come into play here. Now, what is our adoption challenges? And for some of you who are still thorough would remember the Kubler-Ross model, right? Where there's a decline and stability, and then again degrowth and growth, and things like that. Now, based on their recognition where they are and how they are, they will anticipate what challenges they'll face. They'll kind of come through, and that's when this EPIC framework really helps through, and hence the change management principles that we discussed earlier. Now, once they know that, they will anticipate and put it as a part of their roadmap, out of their analysis, right? The external and internal workforce and so on and so forth. All those elements will come into play so that they prepare the larger roadmap for whole digitalization journey. Now, for corporate, this takes a very long time, mind you, right? It goes into years actually. And whoever is doing it faster might go wrong somewhere, depending on the size of the organization, of course, right? So if you understand there's a tip, there's a top and a storm in the 3M model, and based on that, there is a whole preparation wheel that one has to go through. Now, based on those preparation principles, we start about executing. Now, this execution, again, I refer, There is a whole impact model, there is a whole implementation model out there in the RISE methodology from an epic framework perspective. Okay, but what goes into it? Okay, and what happens in a corporate typically? I would have touched upon these points in the previous one, but I repeat it so that you get a better and a thorough understanding of this. So how it starts, the whole journey after you've made the whole roadmap. Typically it goes as a first step, and I'm referring to the blue kind of diagram on your screen, where each of the function is taken and there is a priority laid out to start automating and digitizing them. Digitizing and digitalizing in this parlance would mean that each of the function is then automated using digitizing principles. And if you remember from a personal perspective, there's digitization, there is a whole digitize, digitally enhance, and so on and so forth. This is one of those principles. So you digitize first, and in the process of doing that, you enhance your digital requirements, which would mean you automate each of these functions by using software or hardware and other applications out there, so that whoever your internal and external consumers are, they are comfortable using them. And if tomorrow you diverge into a different model, these things only get enhanced. When it's enhanced, it is ready for that also. Okay, by a little bit of tweaking, that is. The second element, right? The environmental automation. What does that mean? Now, though you've made your applications for each function, right? Is the previous data, that is your legacy data, already part of this? Probably not, right? All the previous reports or all the, from the earlier times. Now, this I'm talking about maybe past 10, 20 years where all this was not existing. Now, this would mean your paper format, which is now getting scanned, getting into OCR mode, corrected for the right things and getting into file system, so it can be utilized when there's history of reports required. Same for HVAC systems, right? Where an HVAC, for people who probably might not know, these are used in your air conditioning activity, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. You use automated smart meters, etc., to give you readings, and some of these places are, used for predictive maintenance and so on and so forth. So it comes into your larger systems, where systems are taken care of automatically. Okay, this could be in manufacturing, not only for HVAC, but even for manufacturing or using other equipment out there in your in the corporate world when they start using various machineries. So this is that second element, right? Automating machinery and other elements and digitizing your rest of the parts, which will be part and parcel of the larger application which automated. So that leads to the, once so much of data is getting collected, how you optimize that data. That is when this whole cloud roadmap and how the big data comes into existence, how the migration from the current systems to the future system comes into existence, and again becomes a little more IT and technology and a specialized course of activities, which again right principles are followed through, and there is agile system and ITIL for people who know. People who don't know, don't worry. It's not required maybe from the perspective that you might be looking at. This is more so where established systems can be used, where such principles and latest technologies or methodologies can be used for optimizing IT. Okay, this requires both hardware, software, and so on and so forth. Okay, so once IT is optimized, that means your data that is coming in and going out is the most corrected format and can be utilized for further enhancing using artificial intelligence, right? Where they get decision making by using automation, right? That is where optimization of IT thoroughly plays its role. Now, once all this is done, right, simultaneously the organization has to adapt this. Right? This is where the larger change management principles come to play, which we discussed earlier. Now, for adoption, again, Kubler-Ross principle, where people will desist. Some of them might not want to be part of it. Somebody might completely resist it. Now, once you've done so much, you're finding resistance now. Typically, this is where the larger frameworks fail for digitalization, right? Hence, the organization change management is a very, very important and a large piece of digitalization, where people need to make their people and other stakeholders ready, that is your partners, etc., for adopting these systems. Because if you make the systems and they're not adopted, it's useless, right? Because it will not give the outcome that one is looking for. So this becomes an important element. And again, tip, top, and SOM, right? Where even at individual levels we discussed in RISE1, if your virtual tip, top, and SOM are not aligned, you will never be able to change yourself to go about doing that. Hence, we did the whole mindset activities and the the whole digital kind of kit that you have right now to ensure that your mind is completely ready to go about changing. Okay? This is those principles, right? So moving on to the fifth one, the whole ecosystem, interoperability, and the standardization. What does this mean, right? Now there is, after you do all this, there is some bit of governance that is required. Governance would mean there are regulatory frameworks, there is from a country's perspective, and an organization, you typically create something called creed, right? Which is how people should behave in a particular way so that the fundamentals are not shaken for the organization and the cultures are maintained the way it is. So governance plays a very important role in this. And for people, for people who remember RISE1 and the whole RISE kind of framework, there are passion and there's a foundation. There are two basic principles that are mentioned there, right? This is all about that. Now tomorrow, when you join the community, there are certain creeds that will be followed because of behavior, right? So that will form the culture of the community as well. So for large organizations, this is a very, very important activity, because if culturally there's a downturn, then it has a parabolic effect, or in terms of compounding effect, where people have an issue. Then you see people, workforce getting released out because of automations, people not adopting, being lazy or fearful or whatever that emotion is, right? That creates a lot of hamperings in their current progress. So change management again plays a very important role during these times. Okay, so ecosystem governance or interoperability is very important for by standardizing the current cultural principles. Okay, and in your case, as an individual level, it is you need to continue having that mindset of remember the perseverance wheel. This is that, right? So again, if people are not remembering this, please refresh by going back to RISE1. Very important. All right. Finally, then you go about using the core business improvement. This is okay. This is more so to do with continuous improvement. If you remember Tune from the Epic framework, right, of the Riot methodologies, this is that continuous framework. You remember you avoid blocks, and you mentioned the give and take, and so on and so forth. The sixth principle is all about continuous improvement, because once you're in cycles of, again referring to Kubler-Ross, where you don't know which cycle you are in, right? You don't know how the people should be made ready for adapting to that environment and the organization cultural nuances, so that they are ready for those changes and adopting the changes of the new world, so that culturally things don't change, but from a strategic perspective they come into existence. This is all about that. So your perseverance wheel along with your goal kit is required to maintain that sanity through during every time the things change around you. Because you're tweaking your business plan, remember, every time you come across your newer understanding, your newer knowledge, your feedback from the customer, right? So you're improving continuously with your digital assets and yourself to adapt to those things. Got it? I hope this was clear as I'm understanding, but these are important principles once you go into the practical outcome of these things. Let's jump into the next topic for that. Okay, I'll see you there.